the more I've gone into my sorrow and realised my sensitivities, I've seen it in others. You know, you realise that people are mainly dictated by what they fear and their insecurities rather than their strengths and the joy that they're expressing necessarily. You start to give a lot of people a lot more slack, and you realise that actually the whole world could just do with giving each other a bit of a rest as we try to do our best.
Hello, I'm Thomas Cam, and this is Making Tracks podcast, where I explore the life story behind a song with the artist that wrote it. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the meaning of music. Today I'm speaking to singer-songwriter Sam Brookes, and we're talking about his track 18 and Sleeping, which is from his latest album Black Feathers, which he describes as a meditation on grief. Here's Sam.
I didn't know what album I wanted to make for quite some time, and I guess kind of in the aftermath of a trauma of losing my dad, I remember the initial feeling was, well, I've gone through some trauma, so I should probably write about it. And then there was this great pressure to kind of like impress my dad, even though he's not here to say, well done, son. You wrote a song about losing me. That's great. You've done a great job, and kind of loads of people connecting with that. And yeah, that I definitely sort of bared that cross, if you will, for quite some time. And I remember going through, I think, so 2014 I released an album called Kairos, and then 2015 I was still touring that, but then at the back end of 2015 into 2016, I was like, right, yeah, I've got to write another record, and like I felt the pressure a lot, and I was not in a state of play, let's say that. You know, I was my adult self was definitely controlling the inner child there. It was like, come on, let's get to work, son. And it just didn't happen. I mean, what I ended up doing was writing like about 25 or so songs. And I was working from my home, and I just didn't like anything that I was writing. Interestingly, now reflecting back on that time, I actually think that I wasn't allowing myself the space to, well, I think like now I hold myself very differently, right? And when I say hold myself, I mean, I don't hold myself as a 34-year-old person all the time. You know, it's like if I'm thinking about writing and I start off with a new idea and I'm getting somewhere, and then it stumbles, you know, and it's like not really getting somewhere, then quickly I can be a bit like, oh, that wasn't a very good idea. Maybe I should just leave it, you know. But actually that feels like my adult self saying, yes, you're no good. When actually, if I'm talking to the child inside, it's like, maybe you just need a break, man. Like, look at this this idea is great. And like when I talk to other songwriters, I'm trying to kind of build up this like wealth of tips and ideas around it, because I think it could be a good thing to kind of like build up and maybe release one day in some way. But like becoming your own fan, but also let that kind of not in an egotistical way necessarily, but to the child in a way of like, just keep going with the idea, it's good, you know. So I guess looking back on that time, I was not holding myself in a very healthy way. You know, I was kind of probably wanting to achieve what a lot of my peers were achieving at the time, and being like, yeah, I should write more like this, or and now looking back on some of those songs, I've never released any of them, but there was some really great stuff in there, and it was actually very exploratory, and I didn't give myself that I didn't celebrate that at all, basically. I just moved on from it, you know what I mean? Like, that wasn't very good. And then that was a time where into 2017, I think it was. Can't actually remember when I broke up with my ex now, which is probably a good thing. But I think it was 2017. And then that was a whole new kind of experience and a whole new sort of trauma in itself, and kind of a rediscovering, kind of disconnecting from my life as I knew it, but then also a journey of rediscovery, which was really what I needed in my life. And then a whole new sort of batch of songs started coming out that weren't on this new album. But then there are also some songs around that were definitely from more of a kind of reflective place on this other journey, this continuation of a journey of grief. Because even though the album is about sort of under the umbrella of grief, like, I think that grief, I think I could write another album about grief in 5 years' time, but it'd be completely different, but all on the same subjects in a way, because it's a continuation for me. And it's it's something that just keeps on growing. It's, it widens, it deepens. And when I started to kind of tap into a lot of my sensitivities around it, the kind of grief that I was keeping at bay for a while, when I started tapping into that, I realized how sensitive I was as a human being. And I just started, weirdly, I really connected with myself as a child again, because I was feeling all these feelings of being frightened, of the world around me, and be feeling out of control in that way. But then also my, looking in the mirror and seeing sort of 28-year-old going, well, come on, mate, you should be able to sort this out, And it's like, no, I can't. I'm just a little kid that doesn't know what I'm doing.
I was reading about, the song a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Your realization that there was a parallel between how you were feeling now and how you were feeling when you were 18.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I wrote that song, 18 and Sleeping, about sort of 3 or 4 years after, about 3 years after I broke up with my ex and moving to Bristol. And actually I was feeling pretty good, because I'll also, there's something that links this story, is that when I was in London still at the time, I started to experience feelings of anxiety, and I was kind of like, what is this? Never felt it before, as I thought it anyway. And then kind of ignored it, really. Just thought, oh, I'm just a bit stressed or whatever. Then went down to Bristol, and actually life was really great. I was really enjoying immersing myself in the city, being a single person, just enjoying that freedom of meeting people and just like staying up late and kind of, getting lost under the city lights, as it were. And but then this anxiety just started getting a bit worse. It was really tapping into my insecurities, in terms of like suddenly being, I don't know, on a date, for example, with somebody, and then I'm like, ooh, I could really feel this, like I'm sort of, I guess everybody's feeling of anxiety is different and similar in some ways, but for me it was like somebody had plugged me into a very low voltage and it was coursing around my body, and it was making me feel quite unstable. And then if it intensified, it was like a lightheadedness, and then I never passed out, but it was kind of going that way, and so yeah, and then when I came to writing that song, I guess I realized that, actually looking back now, I guess that song had been writing itself for many years. It was just, I had kind of, a leak had sprung, and suddenly I could see where it was coming from. And actually I'm kind of floating in all this kind of stuff. And I'm going to have to swim down to kind of plug the hole and then open the door and let it drain out. You know what I mean? But yeah, and it's interesting that I wrote it at that time, because actually I was only just on the beginning of a journey that I went on, realizing my kind of my depression. And when I say my depression, it was just more of a realizing that actually I was in this cycle of feeling good, and then it's not like a bipolar thing, but it was more like, like spike. It wasn't like strong spikes of high and low, but it was like a really slow rotation in a way of like getting really good, everything's really good, but then for some reason just kind of thinking that things wouldn't be good anymore, and then you just slowly slip back down, and maybe everyone feels a bit like that, I don't know, but for me it was an interesting thing to realize that actually when have things just been kind of quite linear in that way, and actually I'm just cool, I'm just at peace and feel contented a lot of the time, and I'm not looking for things to kind of make me feel more contented, and when those things don't happen, you slowly sort of they kind of knock you down a little bit. But it was interesting that I wrote that song at the beginning, because I would have thought that actually I would have wrote that song at the end of that kind of realization, because then I went into therapy and did a lot of going back into my childhood, and it's actually only now that I realise that. It's kind of funny that I wrote that song then, but I was just connecting with that feeling of not being able to, very simply, just wanting to stay in bed and sleep, and just like, I'm just not interested in waking up, because I just not sure there's much to wake up for right now, which sounds a bit sad, but it really reminded me of when I was a teenager, and that time when you just haven't got, I mean, it's 18 and sleeping, but it's definitely that teenage period where you're not quite in control of your life, or at least you don't feel like you are. You can't drive yet or whatever when you're 16 or something, and it's like, yeah, mum doesn't really want me to go out, but I really want to go out, or whatever it is, and you feel like you're not in control. That was the sort of feeling that I was having. I was like, I'm not in control, and I just want to stay in bed. And actually I started writing the song, the verses, I had the chord progression for ages, and actually I tried to sort of write some more optimistic lyrics over it, because it's not super poppy happy, but it's got that kind of element to it, and an optimistic feel to it, shall we say. And I tried a load of lyrics on it, it just didn't work. It was just starting to sound really cheesy, and then I was like, come on Sam, how are you actually feeling? And I was like, well, I've not been feeling that great lately. Okay, let's try and write about that then. And then it actually was starting to sit really well, and I went on a walk with a friend of mine, and she was talking about a family member, and she actually said, he was kind of going through a similar thing, but he was 18, and she said, he's just 18 and sleeping. And I was like, wow, that really sums up how I feel, and actually that's a great line, and then there was the song. I just kind of went home, and I think I kind of thought about what she said, and then I started writing the chorus, and it just sort of fell out that way.
Unfortunately, due to YouTube's copyright restrictions, I can't play the full track here, but there is a link to the YouTube video of the song in the description. If you'd like to listen to the full episode uninterrupted next time, you can do so on the website or on all podcast platforms, and there are links to those in the description. Hopefully, you've now had time to listen to the song, so let's get back to the conversation. I love that song.
Thanks, man. I actually wrote it up 2 keys, I think. And actually, no, maybe it's up 2 keys, just up a whole tone. And I was singing it, the chorus, I was actually singing it all in sort of full chest head voice, most of it. And actually, it did give it a different feeling to it. And when we came to record it, the producer, Dom Monks, suggested, he was like, have you sort of shifted around with the key and stuff? Because the rest of the album definitely has a much, I don't want to say poppy, because that song is not pop, but do you know what I mean? It's got a less poppy sort of melodies going on in it, and that song definitely, that could be done in a much more sort of Americana country, like with the shuffle on the snare and 3-part harmony all the way through. Hopefully someone will make me millions by doing that one day. I decided to make the least radio friendly version.
It's quite different, and there's instrumentally as well. I mean, your first album was very much guitar, I think, more folky stuff, and this album you kind of experiment with a bit more different things in that.
Yeah, for sure. My first record was, I kind of think we sort of leaned towards a more traditional lineup, as it were, like with fiddle, and just in terms of the arrangement of stuff as well. Second album, Kairos, we sort of tried to move away from that and go down a more, I guess you call it, an alt folk kind of genre, where it's more an electric guitar and using synth as a way of, for bass basically. And then if we did use bass, it was more of in a sort of percussive, melodic way to go along with the drums and that kind of thing. And then with this record, we decided to put like a trio around the songs. So me on guitar singing live with drums and bass. And then we cut all the tracks live. We cut 2 tracks. No. 3 or 4 actually, with keys as well. So we did, some of them were 4-piece. But the whole atmosphere is sort of created by that on this album. It's got that kind of raw feeling to it, with moments of other instruments sort of, when they're added, it definitely sort of stretches the band nice and wide and deep. And I mean, also it's down to Dom who produced it and recorded it, because he really created that depth for us to play into, in terms of like, it's interesting because, when you get into sort of conversations about producers, and everyone's like, oh yeah, they're amazing, they make everything kind of like, they do really cool stuff with like plugins or I don't know, whatever it is. But Dom has got an amazing way of making you play really well, because he's making it sound so great that it just makes you get lost in the performance. You forget what you might be sounding like, your guitar sounds like, or whatever, and you're just in love with the sonic kind of connection that's happening, I guess. And he's just so good at capturing sound. It's just a real joy. I make demos at home and I really enjoy getting into that, but I'm just blown away every time when I go into the studio with him and I stick my headphones on and I start playing. I'm like, this sounds amazing. What the hell are you doing? And then, he showed me this. He was like, well, your vocal is going through this compressor here. And it was like an LA2A. I always get the name wrong of it, but it's the legacy one. It's like a real life plugin, you could touch it. And it's he was borrowing it off of, I hope I'm not getting anybody in trouble by saying this, but he was borrowing it off Ethan Johns, who he works with, but it was actually Glyn Johns, which is his dad's. And he was like, yeah, Joni Mitchell's probably sung through that. And I was like, what? So maybe it was Joni making it sound good for me.
Yeah, the ghost of Joni.
She warmed it up.
Yeah, exactly. That's really cool. I mean, I have not kind of experienced doing those live, what is the word? Just real compressors and that kind of thing. But it's funny because when you're making digital plugins, you're trying to imitate analog effects through digital. And I don't know, there is that strange thing now of the why are vinyls coming back,
Yeah.
And it's almost like when technology first started to really take off, everything was trying to modernize, let's make it more futuristic. And if you think about what, like in the 50s, they thought the future would look like now, it was all cleaner and more efficient and, sharp lines, and with CDs it was like, cool, we can get higher and higher fidelity. But actually, I think this is true for a lot of things. Now we're like, there's something that it becomes almost sterile. There's that, it has lost that warmth and that heart that comes from it being, the sound waves being not precise and not perfect and not sharp. And I think maybe there's a yearning for that in the music that we listen to.
I hope so. I mean, like plugins and the fact that you can record at home is amazing. What you can actually do is amazing, and certainly lots of artists get the most out of those pieces of equipment for sure. But you've got to ask yourself, why are we in the situation that we're in? Why has it led to that? Again, not saying that it's a bad thing, but why has it led to that? And if you look at, lots of recording studios are not being able to survive because they cost a lot of money to run. And then you're like, okay, well, why are bands not coming in? Well, bands are not getting the money up front to be able to afford to work in. So why is that happening? Yeah. Oh, because, and then you start looking at it and then you're like, oh, that's interesting. So is it a great thing, or is there now an opportunity to realize that, the arts are really important and we should invest in marrying those two worlds? Because really, if you look at some of the great artists at the moment, or some of the people that are really marrying those two worlds together, great engineers and people that know what they're doing in terms of the technology, marrying it with how to capture sound and that kind of sensibility around analog recording. They're the people that are making really amazing records, and actually that's why, like, I was astounded by the quality of sound and the sort of orchestration and stuff on some like video game music, because I was just like, this music is amazing. Yeah. Like, I was playing some game and I was like, this is making me cry. This music is like, this is amazing. And you realise, well, why is that? Because there's loads of money in video games, and people are investing in like creating that experience, and hopefully, that can come back into, I hope that can come back into kind of modern contemporary music. Yeah. Because those environments are really important. Studios are really important. It's a place for exploration, and it's good to have space and not, the music industry needs to stop kind of being like, that's it, go and make all those albums in your bedroom, and we'll take most of the money off you when we buy it off you, but it won't cost us any money to make, so that'd be great, and you'll just be on your own for the whole time.
And that, you look at, I love watching old videos of people in studios, and bands like the Beatles, Fleetwood Mac, Beach Boys, there is that, you can see them, they've got all the notes around, and that environment of just being able to play with ideas. And you listen to off takes of George Harrison, there's this set of things where he really clearly wants to do a cover of I Shall Be Released, because he keeps playing it and none of the others want to play it. But it's that open environment, like you say, and it's symptomatic of everything wants to be slimmed down, pressed, made more efficient, right? And it's easy to kind of get into this anti-establishment, the companies are doing this and stuff, but it's it's symptomatic of a certain way of looking at everything and the arts in general as well. And I think there's this kind of dual effect where on the one hand we're realizing how much stuff can be done digitally, and that's a positive thing, and certainly being able to connect virtually and new things, but also a realization of the value of things that are live and that have heart and that are real, and it's kind of, it's like the virtual, it's allowing us to explore more of what the virtual can be, but at the same time, here's what's real, here's why it matters. And hopefully, like you say, that will in the music industry and in other things kind of bring back that emphasis to, quote, real music, real,
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. It's, yes, I actually played a gig in a venue last night. I live streamed a gig, and it was so great just to be doing something which felt a bit more real. You know, it was still live streamed and all the rest of it, but it really made me pine after being in a room with people and experiencing live music and just the vibrations, you know, of other people and yeah. But I was chatting to I've got like a Patreon community, and I was chatting to them, and that everybody ranges quite differently in age, and some of the older people were saying that you know, when we used to go to gigs, everyone used to talk to each other.
Yeah.
He's like, now everyone's on their phones.
Yeah.
And I was like, are you just saying that? Or is that, you know, is that just that sort of thing that your mum and dad say to you? Like, well, in our day, you know, but they're like, no, seriously, if you were on your own, like and you were there to see the band, that's the thing. It's like when people are fans of things, you will get on with other fans, and, you know, you kind of want to know like who else is really into it kind of thing. And people would go to gigs and just, kind of be like, oh, are you here to see? Yeah, I'm here to see, you know, and then get excited about it. And I'd really love to see that come back in a sense, you know, in like the community, because I think that would, again, sort of as a knock-on effect, would really help venues to kind of, because a venue, you know, great venues have a good community around them. And if I won the lottery, not that I play the lottery, but I would want to start a venue, because I really want a venue that it, and also it'd be great because if you won the lottery, then it doesn't matter if you lose any money, because a lot of venues don't make a lot of money. But create an environment where like people want to hang out, and like after the gig they want to stay there, and you know, it's not like bouncers kicking you out, or you've got like, if you want to meet the artist, you've got to get in a line, you know, there's like a dedicated space for it, and like the mood changes, or, you know, like whatever it is, you know, maybe it's just a bit idealistic, but
it makes me think of the Cine Cafe, you know, with Jeff Buckley.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So, I mean, the story with him is that they always say he kind of came out of nowhere. So he'd been playing session guitar for a couple of years in New York and had not sung at all. Really. Well, he hadn't sung publicly. And then one day he went to this cafe and said, "Oh, can I start playing?" And they were like, "Yeah, okay, you know, sure, whatever." And then, you know, he started to sing, and you know, a lot of his music is recorded live at the Cine Cafe. And he said that he actually learned his craft doing it because in terms of the vibrations of the space, like he had to retune his guitar to something that would fit with the frequency of the washing machine going off. And, you know, and actually something you said to me once, which I have taken very much to heart and use in my thing, which is that when you're playing a busy pub or a cafe, nothing cuts through the noise like a single vulnerable voice.
Definitely, man. Yeah, it stops people in their tracks, you know, because I think it's like it's our way of communicating, isn't it? You know, and if you show that vulnerability, then most people shut up, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Did you, I recently read, maybe a year or so ago now, but the recent book that came out about Jeff Buckley that was written by his manager. Have you read that?
No.
Oh, you will love it.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. Yeah, it is fantastic. It was written by his manager, which I've forgotten the name of right now, and I can't even remember what the book's called. But it'll be the most recent book that's been out, and it's quite obvious that it's by I think it's something in the title which sort of suggests that it's by his manager, and because he hadn't talked about his experience with Jeff until 20 years after he didn't do any interviews and stuff and cut ties. And then, you know, the book starts with him saying, you know, it's like coming up to the 20-year anniversary of Jeff's death. And he was like, maybe it's time to kind of go up in the loft and get those boxes out. And he sort of, and then just starts on this amazing journey, like talking about working with him. And it's really lovely. Really lovely, yeah. And he talks about the Cine cafe because he was dragging label boss executives down to see him, because apparently he played a couple of Jeff's tapes to them, and they were like, no, I don't think so, man. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like, it sounds nice, but like, is it jazz, folk, blues? What is it? You know? And he's like, he plays a load of covers. Like, has he got any songs? You know? And they were like so hung up on this. Like, what is he?
Yeah.
He's nothing we've heard before. So isn't that mad?
Yeah.
There was somebody that didn't think that he was worthy of releasing that guy's music. It just shows you that, like, you should just never give up.
Yeah.
Because maybe the world's just not ready for you yet.
Yeah.
You know, in that way or whatever, or the moment hasn't arrived, you know, and in whatever scale it ends up in. But I just find that amazing. Yeah. Like, it's just, it's really interesting. But yeah, he, one by one, apparently he took different parts of the label he took down there. And I think it was somebody from the classical side or who was into jazz he took down first, and he was like, this guy's amazing, you know. And they saw right there and then that he had it all. Not only could he sing the songs, but he could hold the room and make people laugh. And I spent a lot of time working a few of his songs out during lockdown as well, and really, really going into the because our ranges are pretty similar, but my chest voice sort of, or head voice, where we break from head to chest is slightly different, which is really annoying and really challenging when I'm trying to sing one of his songs. But I was learning Grace, and
me
it's
too.
Just like,
I've been learning Grace as well. Yeah.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. The more and more I was learning his stuff, the more I realised that, you know, it's like, it's so emotionally led.
Something I read of his saying, he said, you know, because he does write songs and they're good songs, you know. But he said that the reason he wanted to do so many covers is he just wanted to explore just the voice. And you think about great opera singers don't write their own music.
It's true.
And that's because then they can focus on the voice, and he wanted to explore what is it about these songs that I love. And then just to play, right? He's so playful.
Yeah.
There's this, have you listened to, I think it's on the extended version or some Offcuts album, Alligator Wine? Have you heard that?
Oh yeah, I've heard that. Yeah. That's originally by Screaming Jay Hawkins.
Oh, is it? I didn't know. It's insane. It's absolutely nuts. Yeah.
Because he's got this like, whoa,
yeah,
you know, like crazy vocal.
Yeah, exactly. It's so bizarre.
That's awesome.
It kind of sounds. I didn't know it was a cover. I literally thought he was making it up because it's so weird.
Yeah, he's an amazing being for sure.
It's on the Live at the Cine album actually, and you can hear people laughing, I think, in the background. And it would be just incredible to be in that space. And again, I think that is something that will come out of this positively. I think it will be good if you've survived, because obviously it's been really hard. A lot of venues are shut down, but I think there's going to be a real appreciation again of venues and a physical space and physical intimacy, and, you know, the brief periods in between the two lockdowns when I've had the chance to be with my family or be with my friends. Like, it's so different. It's so much more. It's so much more. You know, we're not, as good as it is to connect virtually. It is just, you know, an image of a face moving and a voice, you know, on a flat screen. And it's like we've slimmed down the minimum efficiency of interaction to its barest parts. But there's do you know what the difference between analysis and synthesis?
No.
So analysis is when you separate all the different parts out. So you analyze, you take them apart and you look at the component bits, and that's kind of the scientific method, isolate the variables and so on. And I think we have looked at the world and at music and all sorts of things in terms of, let's break down the component parts. How can we get these mechanically and efficient to work most efficiently, whether that's in terms of, profit or ease of use and all this kind of stuff. But the other side of that is synthesis, which is to bring things together again, but I think that we feel that slight disconnectedness of the world being broken down into parts and perhaps lose the sense of the whole. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and actually you can have a connection to the whole as a whole, if you know what I mean. This idea of every part is the whole, because everything is everything. You are as much the whole as you are the part. You're as much an apple as you are the tree. And part of the thing of analysis and to focus on the individual and so on is to lose that sense, and this is the ultimate version of that, because we're all broken into parts, and like I said, the most efficient thing has been worked out, and yet I think that has created a yearning for synthesis, for things to come together, whether that's physical community or, like water cooler chat, like things that aren't just like, here's a purpose, we are sitting down to discuss this for this long. It's just that casual being together. And I think in terms of our way of thinking as well, I think there's a shift away, I hope, from just analysis, and that there's more of a thought about how can we organically, naturally bring things back together.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, I'm doing a lot of thinking around that, kind of feeling connected to yourself and your senses, especially which in turn makes you feel more connected to everything else around you and feel more as a whole, I guess. But I think during sort of the lockdowns that we had, and with being a musician, I hadn't realised all the things that gave me meaning. And for me as an artist, and again, I'm kind of only realising this now as I reflect. I spent a lot of time in January just reflecting on last year, because I thought, it's so horribly grey outside and I can't go out, and not really feeling that inspired to kind of be an artist right now. So let's work on the human here. I just kind of thought about my connection that I have to what I do, and I feel like I write music to create a space for people, a space for myself first and foremost, for me to connect with myself, and then because I then go out and play the music and I release it, I'm kind of creating a space for people. And I honestly didn't realize that is simply the reason why I do why I do what I do. And I didn't realize that until last year, because when that got taken away, I didn't know what I was feeling, but I was feeling upset. I was feeling like, oh no, what? Hang on. And I was thinking about myself, and I was thinking about other people, because I love going down to open mics, I've got friends in all sorts of areas of the music industry, and some of them are, on big labels and stuff, and then I tell them I'm going down to an open mic. They're like, why are you going down to an open mic? I'm like, because it's great.
Yeah.
It's like, it's life. It's real. It's the real stuff, man.
Yeah.
And it's a great place to try out a new song.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you're just connecting with real people, and it's, and everyone's on a level as well. And that's what I like about it, is there's no headliner. It's just like, we're just here to have fun and appreciate music. But when I wasn't able to do that, I was like, right, I've got to figure out this live streaming thing, because I just want to play.
Yeah.
And if there's 10 people or 100 people, then great, I don't mind.
Yeah.
But again, I was trying to create this space. I guess it wasn't until I started that, and then out of that, I thought, I think I might do a Patreon to kind of like, what's the word? Sort of distill this group of people that are interested in creating that,
like a venue,
that community, like a venue, exactly, yeah. Which has been really great to kind of come to that kind of realization. But yeah, I think that there are always so many forces I feel that have sort of been on me, and I think a lot of other people, about that sense of analysis that you're talking about in terms of separating you and hanging your, you are kind of a result of your past, and you will be judged on your future in a way, and we're not kind of realizing that actually we are whole and we are a great thing right now, just being.
Absolutely.
Just being. And that is super powerful to kind of sit with.
That is the art that I'm trying to cultivate, and actually this has given me, in many ways, there's been for me, I don't know if a blessing is the right word, but it's been a time to strip away things and to find that the base of what it is that's being, because I think Epicurus talks about ataraxia, and basically that means that happiness is not a positive quality, by which I mean it's not a question of you adding things to it, this. It's actually it's a negative in the sense of taking things away to try and get to zero, because he says that basically zero is serenity, it's peace, it's joy. That is actually, that is almost perfection. That is what we live for. And the things that we add, fear, anxiety, need, these are things that are kind of added on to the baseline. And then of course you add possessions and you have fear for those things. And so that's why he advocates a very simple life, which is basically farming with your friends, a small group of your friends. You farm together, you live together, you drink wine in the evening, and and it's just that basically. And I think he's probably very happy, not that I would necessarily want to do that with my whole life, but that sounds like, cultivating that.
Therein lies the challenge in this modern day as well, right? Because for sure, but how do you, if there are things that you and certain industries you want to get into, and because that's your passion, but then they're full of these constructs which are pulling on you and telling you need to be more beautiful or stronger or write a better song or whatever it might be. That's when you sort of need to sort of, at least in your mind, or in your soul, have that farm and that wine to go back to. Do you know what I mean? It's that's like beautiful. If it's not your reality, then let it live inside you. It's kind of, but that's when it becomes challenging for sure. It's like, when your rent goes up or whatever, it's like, what? Why? Wait, where's my farm? Where's the wine? Where are my friends?
Oh man, that's so true. That's so funny though. But also that's such a beautiful. It's funny actually. I do have that. I have a couple of places.
Farms.
I have one is that I came to in a dream once, and it's a rice paddy, and I'm in a kind of farm. But the other one, and I actually talk about this in a song that I wrote recently, is So when I had cancer, and you know a lot about that journey, I had quite a few. Well, I had some friends who died basically, and I was kind of had this sense of like, how do I honor that without? How do I honor them without at the same time carrying that guilt and that weight? And what I did is within myself, within my mind, kind of meditating, I suppose, I created a kind of a memorial garden, and they kind of live there. Like my memories of them live there, and sometimes I go there when I'm lonely. I go there when I'm lacking, because I think also it gives me perspective. It gives me a feeling of connection to them and to myself, and so that I found really, really, I don't know, really valuable, I think, and
Oh, that's really lovely.
Yeah. So the song that I wrote about it, and this is a song that, again, was for me very cathartic, is called "Please Don't Take Me Home," and it's a song which is about basically my mixed feelings about death. Because if you listen to a lot of my music or read what I write about at the moment, a lot of it is to do with the value of accepting death and how much that has shaped me and has brought me peace in my life. And, that if we can only understand and accept death, then we can really begin to live and live without fear and be ourselves. And you learn what matters and you strip away all this stuff. And for me, that experience has been absolutely the most important in my life, being close to death. And at the same time, I'm 24. There's so much stuff I want to do, and I don't want to die. I don't want to die now. And so the song is called "Please Don't Take Me Home," and writing that song was so cathartic, like in the most profound sense of the word. Because catharsis was in the Greek times that the audience would come and they'd invest their emotions in the play, and then those emotions would dissipate in a way, get that stuff out, and then they would be free to move on. And I had not at all registered that I had this fear at all. And it was physically like almost cloudiness, and I'd had it for so long I didn't even register it existing. And then I wrote this song, and it was like, it was just gone. Like it was incredible. It like changed my life completely. And ever since then, like just by expressing it, writing it down, it was so cathartic. And,
was that so hang on, was this the song that you just finished?
I wrote it, I think October, maybe, last year.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I remember you talking about, and how you spoke about it in your play about coming to terms with, you've been told that you're not going to live anymore.
Yeah.
So to be told that you are going to live.
Yeah.
And then to regain a fear.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's an extent to which the subconscious subverts the fear of death, because it's absolutely true, and I still feel that I'm not afraid of dying at all, the fact that I will die. So it's like the fact that I will die, that idea brings me peace and it gives meaning to my life. But at the same time, if a man with an axe was running at me, I wouldn't be like, "Oh, it's okay, I'm not afraid," like I don't, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's direct. Still have a direct fear of death, just not the indirect fear of the idea that I will die. And so I think, with this song, I think there's an extent to which maybe, I don't know if denial is the right word, but that feeling of I'm okay with death was kind of obscuring that there was this fear, because of course there's still this fear. And I feel I'm like I said, I'm 24, 25 next month, and like
getting on.
But I've lived such a kind of dense life, and at the same time there's so many things I haven't experienced. And I think I experienced time very slowly in life, very intensely. And there's this Khalil Gibran quote, which I absolutely love. Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. If you were looking back on this album in, say, 5 or 10 years, how you think that your perception would change? How do you think you'd view this album?
To be honest, I'm already feeling a distance from it. I didn't realise how much I was carrying the album and the topic and that phase, I guess, or should I say that the first phase of grief. I called the album like a meditation on grief, because I felt like I was, meditating on it, and I was coming to an awareness that it was there and an acknowledgement of it. And I think that's why I said to you earlier, I feel like I could actually now write another album about grief, but it would be very different, because I felt like I was in a vulnerable place with that record, experiencing those things. And now I feel like I'm in a kind of, I want to say stronger, but I don't mean stronger that now I'm strong.
More resilient, maybe.
Resilient, yeah, I guess resilient's a better word. And realizing that there is so much beauty in it as well. So I think that I'm looking forward to growing older, the album growing older, and looking back on it, you know. But I feel like it's a real joy now to step back into that space and be absorbed by those feelings that I had and the experiences, because I do go back to those places, but now I'm in a different place, and it's it feels good to feel that as well. I mean, I remember that reminds me of when my dad died, and I never understood what heartache felt like. But I remember sort of doing that thing of like falling asleep crying, and waking up crying. But the pain in my chest, I just couldn't believe. It felt like someone had been repeatedly punching me in my chest, you know, and it was like, you know, and I was really taken back by that there was this organ, you know, in my body that was hurting, you know, and obviously I don't know much about the science around it, but I know that there's lots of neurons around all of our organs, that they've seen that our organs, you know, are sending messages to our brains before that pathway is, you know, it's actually starting from the organ, which is amazing in itself. But coming back to what you're saying about that sort of wealth of sorrow, creating another wealth, or an equal wealth of joy, it's like, there was a few days after he died that I remember walking outside, and it's interesting because actually 8 years ago yesterday my dad died. So maybe sort of 3 or 4 days afterwards, I remember walking out into the garden, and I could see some like he had this like little herb patch, and he was really, really into nature and just like smelling things, you know, just be like, oh, smell that, you know, he'd get really into it. And I just remembered him kind of, you know, looking at this kind of rosemary or whatever it was, or mint, and this intense feeling of being connected to those memories and life, and everything just felt very vivid and brighter all of a sudden. And so I do think that those hard kind of times that you go through, there is a duality to it. It does make things brighter as well, and it's hard to see that at that time. It really is, you know. And actually, it's not that from like day 3 I was totally fine, you know. It was
it's a long term thing, yeah.
But it was almost like that kind of like, yeah, sure, it's a long term thing, but it was like it was the first glimmers that things were going to be all right, and actually maybe things could actually just feel that bit kind of brighter in that way, or stronger. And I guess now that's kind of grown in many sort of different ways, and sort of feeling that sensitivity. You start to see it in everybody, basically. The more I've gone into my sorrow and realised my sensitivities, I've seen it in others. You know, you realise that people are mainly dictated by what they fear and their insecurities rather than their strengths and the joy that they're expressing necessarily. You start to give a lot of people a lot more slack, you know. And you realise that actually the whole world could just do with giving each other a bit of a rest, you know, as we try to do our best.
This podcast is funded by Arts Council England and Youth Music as part of Making Tracks, a partnership project between Trinity Bristol, Basement Studios and Aspiration Creation Elevation. Thank you to everyone who's made this possible, and thank you for listening.